And what I remember was that people running away from the buildings, especially when the second building got hit. I was on the north side of the building, but the plane flew from the south. So the fireball and all that went towards the north, and you see this crowd running away. And then you see the firemen running opposite the crowd. And imagine a huge crowd running away, and just a few guys are running into the building. And that I will never forget how brave they were. Like, you really had to see it and be there. And I have this appreciation and gratitude, and I really love all the firemen and the policemen, because the work that they do is extremely difficult. And when you are in a situation where something is like bad is going on, those guys don't think. The American firefighters and police, they're the best in the world, and they're definitely the bravest. So
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. Welcome to another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Bill Ream, and today I actually have someone who has done some crazy things, some incredible things, and is doing some really incredible things, including literally sending amputee veterans off of cliffs. And let's hear some more about that with my guest this week, Lyubim. Would you be so kind as to share with our guests, who are you?
hi, Bill. Thanks for having me on. I think I'm just a regular guy who had a lot of dreams, and I went after it for a really, really long time. And it so happened that since we're talking about where have you been, life moved me all over the world. I lived in 5 different countries. And, my first place was the place that I immigrated to was the United States back in 1992. I came 1 year after Soviet Union fell apart. So I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and I am the child of Cold War. And also the Afghanistan war started when I was 5, and it ended when I was 16. So my first part of my conscious life, the Afghanistan war, was in the backdrop. And in the Soviet Union, the military service was mandatory. So the possibility of me being drafted and having to be sent to Afghanistan was a reality. And that's one of the reasons, my dad always told me that he's not going to let me go to war, because, it's basically a country that starts a war that has no business of starting, and sends, its best, its future to kill people. And, I've seen a lot of guys come back and they had a lot of issues. And, one thing that I knew about the United States when I was moving there was that President Reagan was sitting in his office, and he had this red button, and he could hit that button at any time and it would be all over. So me moving to the United States was a really quick process. One day my dad came home and he said, "We're leaving." I said, "When?" He said, "In about 3 or 4 hours." I said, "Where are we going?" And he said, "We're going to the United States."
Wow.
I said, "For how long?" And he said, "Forever." So in that 3 to 4 hours that I had, I packed up one bag. I wanted to ski, and one thing that I knew about the United States was that Lake Placid, New York, had Olympic Games in 1932 and 1980, and that's the place that I wanted to go to. So I packed my ski suit, my boots, my helmet. I wore my training suit, and I remember that on the plane I didn't even have socks.
Oh my gosh.
We came to New Jersey. That's where my uncle lived for 5 years. He also immigrated, but he immigrated from the Soviet Union. It was still Soviet Union. And I asked him to help me find the ski school. So he wrote to all the schools in Lake Placid, and the National Sports Academy in Lake Placid invited me for for a day of meetings and testing, and they gave me a full scholarship. So I went. I could live there. I They gave me food. They allowed me to learn English, and most importantly, they let me ski as much as I wanted to. And that was
Excellent.
my first experience of immigrating to a country that I thought wanted to eliminate, the country that I was born and lived in first 17 years of my life. Um,
Wow.
I found that Americans were really generous, and I really wanted to become an American. And I did not assimilate with my own culture. As you know, there are a lot of communities, especially like in New York and New Jersey, there are a lot of communities of immigrants who are living in like clusters, and you can spend 20, 30 years and basically not even learn how to speak English really well. But I was fortunate because I was living in the boarding school, and we had only one Japanese guy and everybody else was an American. So I learned English pretty fast. And then I went to a small community college, and then I transferred. I got accepted to New York University, and I went to live in the city. So that's my first immigration experience.
Yeah, yeah. That's excellent. Would you, before we get into like more of the travel stuff and the stories and experiences that you've had, tell
Mhm.
people, if you don't mind, what are you doing now and where are you now? So you have a massive project that you've put together.
Yes, I think like without giving a timeline, it would not. I'll just give you generally what I do is I take care of amputee veterans. I created a program. Well, for me it's a mission where I take amputee veterans, and I live in Turkey, and I always wanted to do something, but living here, I had an opportunity to do it because starting a program with amputee veterans in the United States would take hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it would take years to get it off the ground. And I had a chance to do it here in Turkey, and I was able to do it. And basically, the mission has grown. And as I told you a little bit before we started the show, is that now we provide physical therapy. I have a psychologist, we have a swimming coach, we have a cycling coach. So something that was really small, like a 1 week program to take somebody who sacrificed so much and bring him into a really nice environment, surround them with really cool people, volunteers who care about them. It became something much bigger than I could have even imagined. Basically, I run wingsforheroes.org. It's a public benefit corporation. We are a Colorado corporation. And now the mission is flying, and my next step is to go back to the United States. And I'm planning on having our first event in San Diego at Torrey Pines Glider Port in November. So we're going to fly our US veterans in San Diego this November, which is super exciting.
So it said on, so we connected via Podmatch, which is actually where I find a lot of the guests that I have. And it really has connected me with a lot of really incredible people with so vastly varied stories and backgrounds and life experiences. But that line, why I started sending amputee veterans off the edge of a cliff, that just it hit me. So
Okay.
you're literally flying people, and how, in what ways are they coming down from the plane
So basically,
or
what
off the cliff? Yeah.
I'm a paragliding pilot, and paraglider is just this little plastic bag that hangs above your head, and you have little strings, and you are suspended in a thing that looks like a backpack. So we have no fuselage, we have no motors. It's free flying. The takeoff is that you need to go off the cliff. And I remember my first time when I went as a passenger, I thought I was going to die. Like, I spend my whole life skiing the mountain, and then we take off, and I see the chairlift just disappears into this little tiny dot. And I thought, I don't even know the guy behind me. So we are going to die. And I said goodbye to my dad, and I said goodbye to my brother. And then I talked myself out of it, and I said, look, relax, enjoy. We're going to land. Everything's going to be fine. And after we landed, I really knew that I had to learn how to fly on my own. And not just on my own, I had to get good enough and get licensed to fly passengers. And we are going to talk about, how I moved between different places, but I ended up taking over a failing nationwide infrastructure company in Ukraine in 2015. And if you look at when the war started, the Crimea was annexed in 2014. So I came a year after the war started, and I saw people, excuse me, I saw amputees and how the country is trying to survive, and there is no system to support people who are just basic civilians. And the guys who come back from war and they had amputations, they have no system, no support, pretty much. They had nothing. And I thought, after one experience of finding a guy by the side of the road, I thought, I need to do something about it. And the idea was that if I can scare somebody like I was scared, then they will probably forget that they're missing a leg or both legs. And that was the idea. So I had an idea of taking a veteran who had an amputation and going off the cliff. And no matter how brave you are, if you're going off the 1,000-foot cliff, your subconscious mind knows that you're going to die. And if you are in the survival mode, then you forget about all your problems. And
Yeah, wow.
actually,
Yeah,
the
that would do
psychologists
it for
say,
me.
yeah, psychologists say that you need one positive experience. Like it has to be a traumatic experience, but it has to be a positive traumatic experience that people can snap out of depression. It could give them a new start. And that was the hope. So the original idea was just to fly. And again, then it grew with, they wanted to stay longer because they were traumatized and exhausted from war and amputations and, going through all the recovery process, which is super long. And then I found out that they have needs. So we added physical therapy and other things.
So everything you do, you don't do anything jumping out of an airplane. You don't do like parachuting. You just do the gliding,
We're
right?
flying, yeah. We
Okay.
do paragliding, free flying, but
Yeah.
we don't jump off the airplane. And actually, on the paraglider, you spend a lot more time in the air. If the conditions are right, you can fly all day. You just go up with the rising thermals, the rising air that runs up, the warm air that is running up the mountain where it's cold, and that air is strong enough to hold the paraglider. And the longest flights are people flying over 500 kilometers, over 300 miles. They fly
Oh
for
my
10, 11
gosh.
hours. Yeah. So, but for
That's
the guys, we
incredible.
fly them 15, 20 minutes. We don't go longer than that. I think they want to. Some of them want to learn on their own.
I'm sure once you get past that initial fear of death, the exhilaration and the adrenaline and the rush that you get, and it's got to just be beautiful to be up there and to see, the earth below. And I can't even imagine. I have to. You have videos anywhere? I need to see.
It's on our website. If you go to our
Yeah.
website, wingsforheroes.org, and you scroll down to the bottom of any page, you'll find all the things that we do. And you on the website, you have to scroll down pretty far. But if you go on our Instagram, it's also Wings for Heroes. I pinned the video of the first flight to the top, and actually, I have a new video that we just got approved for a Kickstarter project. There is a video flying on our Kickstarter, and that's the newest one, and it's a really cool video. We had a guy who just came and he flew one day, and the next day we got our branded glider. Well, actually, it was brand new, and we needed to put the logo on it. So our volunteers, who are two guys that they're also pilots, they took the brand new glider, they put the logo on it, and the next day they flew that guy again and they made that video. So yeah, the videos are on the website and also on the Kickstarter.
Excellent. So you have the website, you have Instagram. Are there any other socials that you have?
We have Facebook, but I'm not a social media guy because I have to do so much. This is one of the things that I need help with. I need to
Hmm.
find somebody who would volunteer and just work with the content that we create. But all the videos that I posted publicly, they're pulled together on our website. And Instagram it has the most, but We have Facebook, Wings for Heroes, and Instagram.
Excellent. Well, so on that note, like if anyone's listening who's interested in helping out a cause like this, who has the ability and the time and would be willing to do that, I'll make sure that we have the website and everything in the show notes. And
Thank you.
there's ways to contact Lyubim on the website, I'm sure. So let's hope that somebody reaches out to you. And maybe by the
That'd
time
be
this
great.
airs,
Yeah.
maybe you already have someone. But so this normally I would go from this point and I would ask how travel started for you. We already addressed that. We know
Mhm.
how travel started at uh,
Oh, it started. It started
younger
really
age.
early. I started skiing when I was 6 years old, and then I found out that it's the way to skip school. So I skipped a lot of school. I skied a lot, and it was first within the Soviet Union, and it was a huge country. And my sport was ski jumping. And if you look at ski jumps, they're all different. There is no standard. So every jump is different because they're in different altitude. The thickness of air is different. And the more different hills you ski, the better you become. And Soviet Union had a really strong athletics program. So we would leave like in November and come back home in March. And we'd be skiing all that time. We'd be going to different places. So traveling for me started really early with skiing.
And I suppose that the not just the altitude or the different jumps themselves, the snow probably made a difference too. Whether it was, I imagine, whether it was a softer snow or a harder
Absolutely.
snow, or
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're on harder snow, the feeling of speed, you feel like you have a lot of speed. And on softer snow, you feel like you have less speed, even though it could be the same. So yeah, that's different. And profiles, they're all different. There are so many different variations that one hill you can love it in one spot, and then you can go to a different place. Like World Cup, they move every weekend, and there are I think like 20 weekends, about 20 weekends that they go to different places, and it's all different hills. And there are some hills that even the best guys, they have hills that they don't like. You don't have the feeling. And imagine if you're going 60 miles an hour head forward and all you have are these little sticks that you split and lean in between. That's a lot of faith. And it's a lot of
yeah, it
pressure on your
is.
subconscious mind trying to convince it that we're not going to die.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, geez. Okay, so
So traveling all life, I was from very early age, from 6 years old when my dad put me on skis the first time. It was away from home. Then I went somewhere else.
yeah, excellent. So this is the point that I'll let you handle this question any way you'd like to. Maybe even if you just mention some of the bigger places that you've been to, because you've been so many places around the world. But this is where I say, Lubim, where have you been?
I wish I kept the list that I sent you, but I've been to probably all the countries in Europe. Um, Asia was Japan. I went to the Olympic Games in Japan. Let's
Hmm.
just say where I lived. I lived in the United States. That was my first move. Then from the United States, I went to Slovakia. From Slovakia, I went to Ukraine. From Ukraine, I went to Austria. And that's living, it's not visiting.
Hmm.
And from Austria, I moved to Turkey. And now I live in Turkey.
Yeah. And it is quite an extensive list you have. And I'm sure we'll touch on many of the places as we go throughout the episode. But is there a particular place that you would like to, whether continue from what we were talking about when you were in New York, or if there's somewhere else that you kind of like to start? I don't necessarily go chronological, but we can. Sometimes we just
I
bounce
think
around because there's some
chronological will
place.
make a lot of sense because it's a continuation. It's continuous, and there was a reason why I moved.
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
if we go in chronological order, it would be the best.
Yeah. And then any, tales, like any stories or experiences that were very specific to you that you were willing to share in any of the places, we're happy to hear them. So, yeah. So if you want to, did you want to continue from New York then?
We can continue from New York. So basically, I really wanted to go to business school in New York City because that's the business capital of the world. And I got into NYU, and after finishing it, I was really lucky to get a really good job on the trading desk. Our address was 50 Broad Street. And if you look at the address of the New York Stock Exchange, the original building was built, I think it was 14 Broad Street. And then they kind of built around the corner because Wall Street and Broad Street, they intersect. And now everybody talks about New York Stock Exchange, the white front of the building that you see, it's like you are on the corner of Wall Street and Broad Street. So my first office was 2 buildings away from the New York Stock Exchange. For somebody who just came to the States, let's say we're talking about 7 years earlier, it was a big deal. But my dream was to work in the World Trade Center. And when a few months after I started, a group of traders broke away and they went to another firm and they invited me to visit the World Trade Center. And I was really excited. And I went to see the buildings. And when they asked me if I wanted to work there, I said, yeah, I want to work there. And they said, do you want to hear terms and conditions? I said, no, I don't care. I don't care if I work here for free, because to me, it was like, it represented the success of the most successful people in history, and I got to work in the World Trade Center. And being a mountain person, and I love skiing. There's no skiing in New York City. So after the 9/11 attacks, I packed up and I went first to California. It didn't really work out for me. Then I went to Colorado, which was an awesome place, but I got an offer from a trading firm in Austin, Texas, and I spent a year in Texas. I don't know if you've been to Austin, but there's no snow there. And to get
Yeah,
to
I have
snow,
been.
yeah, it was a 20-hour drive, and I kept driving to Colorado. And basically, in 2003, American Express hired me in Denver, and I moved to Denver, and it became my home for more than 10 years until I left for Ukraine. So, traveling between the places, it's finding a new place. A lot of things have to work out. It's just the work in my environment was most important, and there is no work environment like there is in New York City, because it's a different planet. But
Hmm.
Colorado really worked for me. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you and the listeners is that, because my office in the World Trade Center was destroyed and it was an act of terror, and I was moving around the country trying to find a new place to live and work, the American Red Cross sent me a check for $15,000 because I was classified as a displaced person, and they helped me to get started. I
And
know there's a lot of.
to be clear, you weren't in the World Trade Center when it happened.
I was downstairs. I
You
was a
were
little
there
bit
when it
late that
happened.
day. Yes, I worked in the World Trade Center when it happened.
Oh my gosh, can you talk about
Yeah,
that at all, or
sure. What would you like to know?
just what was the? I mean, obviously the experience was terrible, but you know,
It was a
it's one of
sunny
those things that.
Tuesday. It was a sunny Tuesday day. It was elections in New York. I think it was elections for a mayor. And that day, the night before, I met my friend from NYU. We studied together for the CPA exam. And the CPA preparation course, we did the weekend sessions. It lasted, I think it was like 8 or 9 months. It was just a super long program. And we became really close friends. He worked right across the right across the highway. I think it was World Financial Center. He worked for Merrill Lynch. And we met really late because his boss kept him at work too long. And by the time we finished talking, it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And until that day, I was never late in my life, because my dad really was, he like drilled punctuality into me from early childhood. He used
Sure.
to say that punctuality is privilege of the kings. That's what was his saying. And then some happened that that day I was late, and more than half of our office was where people were late, and a lot of people who worked in the building were late. It was, you could say it's an accident or it was a divine intervention, but a lot of people were late for work. And I'll just tell you one interesting thing, because you've seen what happened on TV, but
Hmm.
we had a guy who wasn't even part of our company. He was working for another company that ran out of space, or they were remodeling, but they sent him, like the bosses, our boss knew his boss, and they sent this trainee, this new guy, over to our office in the World Trade Center so he can just sit around and watch how what the trading floor looks like, what we do. And he started on Monday. His second day visiting was on Tuesday. And the guy goes to the bathroom, and if the bathroom's in the World Trade Center, you had to walk like down this long hallway. Then you make a right turn, you walk to the other side of the wall, and then you make another turn. So you basically had to go around the whole building to make it to the bathroom. And
Mm-hmm.
when he went to the bathroom, that's when the plane hit the building, and all that fire, it went down the shafts, and it blew out the ventilation, the vents that cover, on the wall. And so the
Mm-hmm.
guy walks in the bathroom, it explodes, he runs back into the office, he's all burned. Then he's screaming, there is a bomb in the bathroom. And we had, Port Authority managed the buildings, and we had TVs, and they came on TVs, and they said, look, we're investigating what happened. Everybody stay put, don't go anywhere. And this guy runs in, and he's all burnt. And our tech guy, who was responsible for setting up all the trading terminals, he says, okay, everybody, we're going. Just get your stuff and let's go. So whoever was in the office already, they took that guy and they carried him 80 plus floors all the way downstairs. And when they were getting closer to the lower floors, they said that people were complaining because, I think the plane hit like above 105th floor. I'm not sure about the
Mm-hmm.
numbers, but it was super high. And we were in the North Tower. It was the first one that got hit. So when they got down to lower levels, people were complaining and moving really slowly. Like nobody wanted to exit. People thought it was a drill, on and on. And, coming from the higher floor, our guys knew what was going on. So they said they picked that guy and they carried him all the way. And he was in relatively bad shape. And he kept asking how much longer. And they're like, just few more floors, few more floors. And they actually carried him all the way down to the ground level, and they got out. Now, all the cell towers were jammed, so we couldn't communicate. There was no right now we have messengers, and you probably can find people. If you have an internet, you can get in contact. But back
Mm-hmm.
in 2001, we didn't really have any messengers or ways of communicating like we have right now. And I remember it was until 8 p.m. until I was able to find, you know, my friend who told me that he talked to the boss and he said that everybody got out. So our guys who were walking down, they actually made it to the bottom when the South Tower was collapsing. So the North Tower got hit first, but the South Tower got hit second, and it got hit lower, so it collapsed first. And they
Mm-hmm.
said when they got to the ground level, the police and firemen, they were screaming like out of the building, and they said they crawled under an ambulance that was standing there. And after the building collapsed, they were actually those ghosted people, all white,
Yeah.
walking across different bridges in boroughs. Some went to Brooklyn, some went to Queens, depending on which bridge. But they were the guys that walking in that ghost crowd.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we were fortunate that we got out, because above us was Cantor Fitzgerald, is the company that lost the most traders, the most people. I think they lost 600 people or something. It was just a huge amount. And their CEO was Howard Lutnick. I think he's a Secretary of Treasury right now. He is one
Wow.
of the President Trump's close advisors, and he is highly placed in the government. But that day, I believe his son started school, and he
Oh my
went with
gosh.
his son to yeah he took his son to his first day of school, and that's how he missed it. And I remember that that guy was so amazing. He promised all the families that he's going to take care of them, and not only he was taking care of all the employees who perished their families, he had to rehire, because Cantor Fitzgerald was one of the largest governmental dealers for treasuries and bonds. And he had a huge responsibility and he played a major role in the financial market. So Howard Lutnick didn't get a break. He had to deal with grieving families and he had to deal with rebuilding the company. So that guy knows what he's doing, and he's got a backbone, and he's got what it takes to be a leader. He's an
Yeah,
amazing guy.
that's very cool, and thank you for sharing that. It's not
Sure.
necessarily a travel story like what we would normally have, but I just thought it was important for someone who was there. So you arrived there. Did you actually make it all the way to work, or did you find out that it was happening as you were on your
I
way?
got out. I got out on Chambers, which is one stop. I could take the subway all the way underneath the World Trade Center. Then I take the
Mm-hmm.
escalator to the elevator from the ground floor, and I would go up to 40 something. I don't remember exactly what. And then I would take an escalator to another elevator, because elevators in the World Trade Center, they didn't go from one to all the way to
All the
100.
way, yeah.
They actually moved in really interesting patterns. They had like kind of L-shaped patterns. They could go sideways, but you
Oh
could
wow.
get only to a certain floor in our building, and then you had to take an escalator to another set of elevators. So there were two different sets of elevators that you need to take to the top. And we always said that getting out would be super difficult if anything happened. And I don't know if you remember, it was, I think Clinton was president when there was an attack on the South Tower. Somebody drove a van, they drove vans underneath, but they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
detonate them. So there was a failed attack. And we always said that the staircases in the World Trade Center were really narrow. Like you and I, we couldn't walk next to each other. There is no room. It was
Oh my
just
gosh.
really narrow. And we said that if anything happens, we don't know how we're going to get out. And I think that was one of the reasons why our tag guy said, "Look, we got to go now," because he knew that it would be very difficult to make it to the bottom floor. Plus, you have firemen running up the stairs and people going
Mm-hmm.
down the stairs. So I can't even imagine what was going on inside. It was big mess, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, again, thank you for that. I just,
Hey, thank you for
like I said,
asking. This is an important part of our history. I think a lot of things changed for not just for me and for people who worked in the World Trade Center. A lot of things changed first for all the Americans. And
mm-hmm.
anywhere I travel in the world, people know that day. And I'll tell you specifically, the guy who signed my tandem paragliding license, he is a legend in our sport, and he got him and his brother. They're actually acrocinco. It's actually the craziest guys who fly. So they do tricks together next to each other in the air. They can do a lot of things just flying in proximity. Sometimes their wings touch one another, but
Oh my
it's
gosh.
extreme of extremes. And both of those guys, they got their licenses on September 11, 2001. So when we had the conversation that I a survivor and I worked there, they're like, we got a licenses and we remember where we were. We holding these things that we worked for and really wanted to have, and then boom, this happened. So anywhere you go in the world, people who were, let's say, 7 years old plus, they remember where they
Yeah.
were on that day. So the whole
Yeah.
world was watching what was happening in the United States. And since we're almost 25 years out, I think it's important to talk about it. And I don't know how many of survivors really talk about it, because it's not something that comes up. But when it comes up, I'm really grateful that you brought this up, and I hope that people who are listening to the show kind of get the perspective of what it was like. And what I remember was that people running away from the buildings, especially when the second building got hit. I was on the north side of the building, but the plane flew from the south. So the fireball and all that went towards the north, and you see this crowd running away. And then you see the firemen running opposite the crowd. And imagine a huge crowd running away, and just a few guys are running into the building. And that I will never forget how brave they were. Like, you really had to see it and be there. And I have this I have this appreciation and gratitude, and I really love all the firemen and the policemen because the work that they do is extremely difficult. And when you are in a situation where something is like bad is going on, those guys don't think. The American firefighters and police, they're the best in the world, and they're definitely the bravest. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, much like military as well, though. Like, you're putting your
Yes.
lives on the line every time you put on the uniform.
Yes.
So, wow.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can shift gears and find something lighter.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So let's see. You were in Denver. How long? So you said 10 years you were
I
in
spent
Denver,
more than
right?
10 years in Denver. I had my own registered investment advisory firm. And, as a first generation immigrant, you have to work super hard because you don't really have much fallback on. Like, you don't have a place you were born somewhere in the States, a home that you can return to, friends, community. You are new in a new place. And I remember when I started my own company in 2004, I was homeless for more than 1 year, going from shelter to shelter, and at the same time trying to build my business.
Wow.
And I took a lot of risk, Bill. I am looking back, I was extreme. I worked really hard, but I always wanted to grow and get bigger and bigger. And all the money that I made in the business, I reinvested it all in the business. I didn't take vacations. I remember there was a period of time, many years, where I just allowed myself Sunday afternoon to go to the park, to walk my dog. And it got to the point where one time I'm walking, we had a 150-pound Akita. It's a Japanese
Mm-hmm.
hunting dog, but he was a big boy and he was not in best shape and he didn't like heat. And we're walking around the park and I'm like running out of breath. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And what was going on is that I spent like years sitting in the office and just working and working and working and working until the business took off. And my claim to fame in the financial industry was that I have 2 degrees, one in finance, one is in accounting. And I was just digging through annual statements and financial reports, and I discovered that Citibank had a $50 billion loss and buried in their footnotes in the financial statements. And basically, I was like, wow, if Citibank has that much in losses that will show up, that will show up soon, then everybody has it. And I got all my clients together and I said, look, this is the situation. And I really think that when it blows up, it will be too late to get out of the market. And one of the clients said, yeah, I was thinking about this. I don't know if you remember that we had those NINA loans, no income, no asset verification loans. They basically, you come in and say, you're right, I make $1 billion, and you sign, and they would accept your application as its truth and verified truth. And some people were getting mortgages. They couldn't make like their second or third payment, but then it got so bad that people couldn't make the first payment. And
Jeez.
my clients were already getting concerned, like everything was great, the market was going to the moon, it was just this huge unprecedented growth on paper. And once I got all my clients out, I started a radio show in Denver. And then, I think a year later I was expanding, and at the top I had 11 radio stations, and I think it was 6 or 7 different states. So
Wow.
yeah, after the bottom fell out, we were in cash, and it was the best position. And I remember when I heard that they started talking on TV, the D word. They wouldn't say depression. They said the D word. The D word is coming. The D word is coming. I was like, okay, it's time to go back in. And it was spring, I think, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So one day after that, a year later, I got a call, and somebody was asking me about the things that I was saying. And I got invited to present at Steve Forbes's Success in the New Economy symposium in New York City. Now, I go back to New York 10 years later to present, and it was in Times Square, and I knew what the tourists that I used to see when I was in college, people would be like walking around looking like they were just lost, asking for help, like little kids, like, please help me
Mm-hmm.
to get out of here. And 10 years later, I got in and I saw those crowds, and it was like, wow, I felt lost. But after success in the new economy, I got an offer to contribute to Steve Forbes's book, and it came out in 2014. It was a bestseller. All the proceeds were donated to charity, so I haven't seen a dime from that. And the following year, I got invited to speak with my mentor, Brian Tracy, at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And then I thought that I got it made. I just turned 39, and I thought I got everything that I wanted to do before I was 40, and now I am going to, monetize. I am going to print money. I am just going to stock up on cash. But life had different plans for me. I went to see my dad. He was working in Kiev. Then I went to see him, and I had my brother was 6 at that time, and he asked me to stay. He said, Lyubim, can you please stay, because all the adults talk about is war. And again, the Crimea was annexed, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Now everybody's on the Ukrainian side, and it's clear who the enemy is. But then Russia would not take responsibility. The people who were fighting against Ukraine, they didn't have any badges on their shoulders. They were called the green soldiers, because the green color uniform but no flag, and nobody took responsibility for where they came from. It was
Oh my
classified
gosh.
as a terrorist operation. But my little brother, who is 6, he's like, can you please stay, because all the adults talk about is about the war. So I stayed 1 week, I stayed second week, I stayed third week, I stayed for a long time. And then I got back to the United States. It was, I think, a few months. My very, very close friend of mine got really sick, and he passed away 4 months later. And then I had another chance to go to Ukraine. And I actually, when I went there, got an offer to audit a company. And I did an internal audit. An internal audit is basically you come in, nobody knows who you are, you have access to everything and everyone. You don't have a title, but you have a key to every office, and people have to give you information. And one thing that I saw, that people were really scared, it was identical like it was in 2008, 2009 in the States. It was like a deer in headlights. And when a successful company is going through a difficult time, there is a lot of fighting inside, and a lot of politics and blaming, and people don't
Mm-hmm.
want to take responsibility. And maybe in that case, nobody could take the responsibility, because the outside factors were a lot of influence. But when I was done with my work, the company offered me to stay and fix some things, and I was there as an American, and as an Americans, we know we can do anything. And at that time, I thought that I can, I can do this thing, and I said yes before even realizing what I was getting myself into. And instead of cashing out on, let's see, we have 23 years of hard work, I took a job in Ukraine, and basically I couldn't take my paycheck because the situation was so bad that I spent most of my time trying to figure out how I'm going to pay 2,000 plus salaries for people who had to feed their families. And Ukraine was the second poorest country in Europe before the war started. So, I clearly understood my responsibility, and I put the company and my work first. And I'm glad that I did it, but I don't know if I would do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
it's
you.
part of my life that is done. I'm happy. Now we're talking about, so from 2015 I was in Ukraine, and that we can talk about, this is probably a good spot to talk about how the Wings for Heroes started. But meanwhile, I just want to add this little, I wasn't taking a salary, but I had periods of time where I would give assignments to people, and they had to get things done. And in 2016 for Christmas, all the employees pitched in, and they sent me skiing to Austria.
Oh,
So
nice.
yes, for Christmas, my Christmas present was going to Austria. I go to Austria. I I went to ski on the glacier. It was really high in the mountains, and I go to check into the hotel, and I see this advertisement for tandem paragliding. So I check in, I turn around, and I see the second one. And I'm like, I have never in my life seen an advertising for paragliding, and now I see two. So I grab that piece of paper, I call the phone number, and the lady says, show up tomorrow at this place, and we'll go flying. So I show up, she gives me a pilot, and he says, is this your first time? I say, yes. And he says, and mine too. It's one joke that you hear when you go paragliding anywhere in the world. That's one joke that you will hear from a lot of people. I don't think it's funny, but that was,
Afterward, it's funny.
I still find it really, it makes me nervous every time I hear people say that joke, because I know how nervous passengers get. And
So you don't use that joke when you're.
never. I just really, I pamper my passengers. I make them feel really comfortable. I explain a lot of things. I talk so much that they can't even think about anything except what Lyubim is saying, and I don't stop talking just to distract them. But
Sure.
I really, after that flight, I was so scared, and I really wanted to learn to do it by myself. So a little more than 6 months later, I organized everything. My birthday is in the summer. It's actually next week. So I took my vacation so I can go to Austria and learn how to fly. And then after that, it took me another 6 years to get my tandem license. But I would schedule my time that I could take trips and continue learning to fly in Austria. And after we got, my job, my task was to make sure that the company lasted until they could refinance the debt they acquired by expanding. It was a regional operator that expanded nationwide at a really bad time, right before the annexation of Crimea. So they took these loans, to acquire gas stations on the east, and then, they lost part of that business. Plus, the volume of sales, it got cut by half, and the currency went from 1 to 9 to the US dollar to like 1 to 30. So we're talking about, you know, their debt
Wow.
tripled in local currency. Their volume
Yeah.
got cut in half, and mathematically, it's like if you even if you look at the U.S. government, it's if you are decreasing the revenue that you're taking, then you have to make it up with debt, and that hole is growing. So it really is a compound effect. But after I finished that project, like 6 years of, I was really alone, working there, and I really needed a break. So I took some time off, and I moved to Austria to, to fly and to get my licensing done. That happened right before Corona.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved back to Ukraine, but we were actually traveling. We were in Tenerife. If we're talking about traveling, we get to Tenerife. It was February. In February, we were in Tenerife, and we came back with a chartered flight. So basically, I don't know if anyone was traveling at that time when the lockdowns happened. But what happened if you were outside of your country? That every country chartered planes, and you had to call your embassy and find out when the plane is going home. And you had to get on that plane, and that was the only way out. There was commercial stop. It was all,
Yep.
I don't know what they call it, repatriation, evacuation, but all the flights were chartered by embassies, and they were flying their people back home. So I could not go back to Austria, where I had an apartment and all my things were in Austria. I went to Ukraine, and for 7 months we couldn't go back to Austria to get our things out of the apartment.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, and we ended up packing by phone. So we found a friend who had a car with the European license plates, because there were checks and you couldn't just drive freely. We
Mm-hmm.
found a friend who had the European Union. I think he had license plates from Slovakia. He drove with another guy to our apartment in Austria. We packed our stuff by phone. We were on Skype packing. They were packing our things, and
Yeah.
then they drove our things to the Hungarian border. And I got a lot of friends and people who worked for me, and we had to walk all our stuff across the border from Hungary to Ukraine.
Oh my gosh. And then put it all into another car.
Well, it was easier on the Ukrainian side
Yeah.
because I was running an infrastructure company. I had more cars than, I don't know, than probably Jay Leno.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, you asked for lighter stuff, but I'm sorry. My life
It's
story, there is not real lighter stuff. It gets more exciting if you think that's exciting. So they carry our stuff to Ukraine, and for 6 months we were literally like everybody else. We were stuck in Ukraine. And one thing about Ukraine, when people ask me what Ukraine is like, I say, like if you take the UK plus rain, you get Ukraine. And it really rained a lot. It would start raining in October and it would rain till end of March. Like, I don't know if you've seen Forrest Gump. You remember how they were going through, they were fighting in Vietnam, and he said it would start raining and it would rain for months. Only our rain was really cold. The rain was super cold and it was really unpleasant weather. And when it was coming, you really want to get some sun. It's like September and it's already getting darker and cooler. So the only country that was open at that time was Turkey. And we came to visit Turkey. I came to visit Turkey and just really fell in love with it. And after that, all my work in Ukraine was on consulting basis. I didn't really want to renew the contract. I just did consulting work until the full scale invasion started. And then, obviously I stayed in Turkey, and this is 4 years of me being in Turkey, which is a great place. If anybody, you ask me one place that people should go to, I would definitely say you need to go on the Mediterranean side of Turkey. The people are awesome. The climate, if you like hot weather, is great. The food is great. Um, all the touristy places are little bubbles. They're super safe. They're super friendly. They're just, out of all places that I've been to, I think this is this is definitely my favorite place. And if I could live here for the rest of my life, well, right now I'm still enjoying it. Like this is the
hmm
place where Wings for Heroes took off, actually, literally started flying.
hmm
And I will go to the United States and Wings for Heroes will be in the US, but it will never be like here because we have the beach and we have a lot of people who have time. All the pilots who I fly with, they are actually, most of my volunteers are other pilots. And when we have our guests, when heroes come here, these guys will stay all night. If a vet wants to spend time on the beach and just watch the moon rise and then moon set, there will be somebody or maybe two guys that will stay all night. They will not go anywhere. And we had one guy rehabbing here for 1 month. Every night he went to the beach, there was somebody there. And when he didn't come to the beach, I got a million messages saying, he's not here. Is everything okay? Yeah, Turkish people are really awesome. We're talking about traveling, definitely put Turkey on your list and make it a high priority because things are changing a lot in the world.
Yeah. And I've definitely had multiple guests mention that they either had been or they plan to go. And it's definitely on my long and ever growing list. So I definitely want to get there at some point. So
It's
it
really,
sounds like
one of the
though,
places that you will enjoy. It's just so
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And it looks like because you did send me a pretty extensive list of other places that you've been. So it sounds like you have had a chance to travel maybe for leisure over the years as well. Or are most of the travels
Yeah,
that you
no,
have,
actually,
are
yes.
they?
When I was working in Ukraine, the later years,
hmm
once my biggest job was to build teams. To teach people. First of all, teach people how to do things the right way. Because in America we have standards. We are taught all our life what it means to get the job done right and what it is to get it done on time. It was not the case in Ukraine. So I had to teach people, look, this is how your job description, this is what you need to do. And we're talking about, if I'm at a gas station and it's not clean, I would get a cleaning lady, I would get a mop, and I would clean and say, look, this is clean, that is not clean, it has to be like this. And all the way up the chain, to doesn't matter where people in what positions, I had to teach them how to do their job. Then I
Hmm.
taught them that you have to submit it, like let's say today is June the 29th, 11:59 p.m., it's acceptable. But once the clock turns at 12 o'clock, 12:01, we passed the deadline. And that is really extremely important. And that is what I was taught at NYU. My business law professor, he taught me deadlines. And in contract law, if you miss by that 1 minute, you're done. You're finished. You did not deliver your part per contract. And then the big thing was to teach people how to come to you when they have issues, because nobody really wants to take responsibility if things are not working out. But we know that if you come to a situation that you don't know what to do, you cannot complete your job description, what your job description requires, then you have to go to your boss. So once I taught them those things, and once I found people who really wanted to work, and it was survival, Billy was like a real survivor. We were counting every gallon of diesel, which gas station it goes to. It was like just every day by morning getting the numbers by hand, and then deciding who is getting how much. And after after the teams were built, I would give them tasks to perform, and I had to wait and see how they do, and I see the outcome, and then I had to do, take the next step. There was no long-term planning. People want to ask about long-term planning. When you're in a country that is at war, long-term planning, it doesn't exist. It's survival. We have to make it to tomorrow, and then till the next day, and then till the next day. But once things got more stable and people were trained and they could do their job, I started traveling. And that's the time, it was France, it was Spain, it was Italy. It was just the European Union countries that I really wanted to see for a long time and never had the chance. Because when you're a professional skier, you go to different countries, but you stay in the hotel, you train, you jump, you compete, you get on the bus or on the train or on the plane, and you go to the next venue. So I've done traveling as an athlete. It's basically going from place to place and performing. And then I got a little bit of time and opportunity to go to different countries. And if you want me to talk about any specific countries, please pick whatever is most interesting.
Well, I would say this. I would, not to throw it back in your court, but I would say, tell me about some of the places that impacted you the most, where maybe you have some incredible stories or experiences that you had. Maybe it's the most beautiful place, or just something super fun happened there, or, and
Obviously, one place that comes to mind, Barcelona. It's like heaven.
mm,
If you like walking, I like walking and I like going to places. Barcelona is a great city to walk. And there's so much to see that you can spend. Like if you make a vacation and you go to one place, then in Barcelona you'll see everything, because you have the beach and you have Sagrada Familia, the famous church that they've been building. I don't know for how long, but wow, it's really, that one place is really amazing. And they have, Gaudi has such a huge impact on that city that anywhere you go, you can just, that you have tours that takes days. You can go between the buildings and Gaudi was the architect that started Sagrada Familia, and he built a lot of buildings. Like you go all over the city and you can see his signature buildings. He's really built some amazing stuff. So if you like city architecture, Barcelona is a really cool place. A lot of history, really like Gothic old stuff. Then I really like Budapest. Budapest is super awesome in terms of walking. They have beautiful bridges, and they have two sides, Buda and Pest. Like the Buda side is really, it has the mountains and hills. So you cross the bridge. If you're on the Pest side, you go to the Buda side, and you can walk there. Like it's just an amazing place to walk. They have so much stuff to see. And because it was so close to Ukraine, it was like a weekend trip. If I had 2 days
mm,
or 3 days, you just get in the car and drive to Budapest. Of course, Vienna is just a few hours down the road. You continue in the same direction, so you go west from Budapest and you get to Vienna. It's an amazing city. It is
It's
always
beautiful.
voted like number one city to live in. And when you come there during good weather, that's really important to go to Vienna when it's summer, because when fall and winter come, it's super cold and super windy. It's always windy. It's just like, you have this 50, 60 mile an hour winds to just sweep through the city, and they're so cold. It's like, whew. But in the
I will
summer,
say, however, I will say the one exception to that, we went in November for the Christmas markets, and it was just so beautiful
did you
that
have good
it made up
weather?
for the cold.
Oh, it
Yeah,
was cold.
generally
So
speaking, we did. Yeah, it was cold, but it was not terrible. So
So
yeah, it was beautiful.
Vienna, right? Would you agree that Vienna is really it's so big, like there's so much to see there. You can just go and get lost in it. It's much bigger than Budapest. There is a lot more to explore, and it's a beautiful, clean city. It's really, really like I love Austria because Austrians are obsessed with making things perfect, and everything
Hmm.
is organized, everything is neat, everything is in order. So it's super safe. Then I would say, one of the cool places is Andorra, because it's this little country that is squeezed in between the mountains. You're going up the Pyrenees Mountains, and you have this country that is situated along the highway. It's like they literally have to build like on the left and on the right side. I'd say there is no paragliding in Andorra because there is not a big enough place to land. You cannot land the paraglider. It's just so narrow,
Oh my
and the
gosh.
way they build everything along the highway into the mountains, it's pretty impressive. Plus, for people who like shopping, Andorra is a tax-free country, and really things are. I remember I bought Ray Bans, real Ray Bans, not the fake real Ray Ban. It said, I think, assembled in the USA. It was less than half I paid for it in Andorra. So if you want to see a neat place, Andorra is neat. And then if you continue towards France, you cross the Pyrenees, you would drive a beautiful road. It's really like wow. And then you drop on the French side and you go down into France. And then have you been to Marseille, Bill?
No, I have not. I have
So
not been to
Marseille, France,
France.
France is so huge and it's so different. Like there are some places, if you go to Lake and Sea, it's amazing. It's just like probably the cleanest and the most environmentally clean place is Lake and Sea and that area of the French Alps. They even have signs that say if you drop one cigarette butt, you pollute 3 meters or 9 feet of space. Like they're really so particular and so into keeping their environment and clean and protected. But if you go to places like Marseille, it's a port city. And if you're going to Marseille, what's his name? Count Monte Cristo. His prison
Mm-hmm.
was right. If you in Marseille, you can take a boat and go to his prison, the Castle If, I believe it was called. So there are a lot of things to see, but because it's a port city and there are a lot of immigrants from Africa, one night we were just walking down the street and we turned the corner and you had to see it. So if you're in Marseille, be very careful where you go at night. It's not a safe place. It could be very uncomfortable. But during the day, it's nice to see what's by the sea, and it's nice to go if anybody is a big fan of Count Monte Cristo. You can go take a boat ride to the prison where he stayed. It's on an island. So a cool trip would be if you go from Andorra through Andorra. You can go from Barcelona, drive through Andorra, and drop on the other side of the Pyrenees into France, and then you can explore and go into any direction.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Sounds like a trip I would definitely like to take.
yeah, car
There's a
ride.
couple places. Go ahead. Finish your.
It's a car trip. You need to rent a car and you need to go. You rent a car and
Yeah,
you drive Spain, Andorra, France, and then you can go home.
excellent. There's a few places on your list that I've never heard anyone talk about on the podcast, at least.
Okay.
So, for example, Luxembourg, Moldova,
Okay,
Tanzania. I've never heard anyone, Tanzania, I'm sorry, I've never heard anyone
okay.
talk about any of those.
So let's talk about Moldova first. It's a place I
Yeah.
don't want to go back to. If
Okay.
nobody makes me, if I don't have to save a life to go there, I will never go back there. It's a country that is landlocked. It borders with Ukraine, it borders with Romania, and it's an old Soviet Union state that has not changed. You cannot drink water out of the sink. And the lady who was my host on Airbnb, she told me, don't even brush your teeth because, it's not good for you. It just really, it's a strange place. It really is one of
Mm.
the, if somebody asked me what was my unfavorite trip, that was it. And not only the way it looks, like I was there only for 3 days, but I did not walk away. I crawled. I was at the airport. It sucked all the energy out of me. It's one place that I don't know why would anybody want to go to Moldova. And I just say, like, if you have a really long list, like, just put it on the last spot. But so
Okay. Fair.
now we take care of a place that, just warning, not much to see, not much to do. Luxembourg, it's strange, it's one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and I think per capita they could be number one and number two income per capita. But it's like one street, you're driving on one street and it says Luxembourg, and at the end of the street there is no more Luxembourg. It's tiny. It's not
Oh
even
my
a day
gosh.
trip. Yeah. So a lot of it are mountains, and you can go up in the mountains, but it's super small. You just drive through it, maybe, I don't know, 20 minutes, and you traveled the whole Luxembourg. It's a hub for companies. It's a tax haven, and it's a place where criminals cannot be extradited. And we know that there are some people hiding there from the United States, the famous movie makers or maker who had some issues. People who have issues with law and they have a lot of money, they end up in Luxembourg because you cannot extradite anyone out of Luxembourg. But it's a mountainous country. It's a super safe country. I think it could be the safest country in the world because there's like zero crime, because practically there are no people, and all the people that are there, they're uber wealthy. They're
Hmm.
all extremely wealthy. So if you like the mountains and if you like to experience the wealthiest country in the world, you can spend some time in Luxembourg. But for me, it was a day trip, and I was really surprised that I discovered everything in such a short period of time. So it's like, welcome to Luxembourg. You're leaving Luxembourg, that kind of thing. And
Wow.
Tanzania, I would say it's one of the most memorable trips that I've had, because we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and that's an amazing
Oh,
place.
wow.
Yeah, they do these. You don't have to be super fit. They organize, like, you have porters who carry all your stuff. The way the climb up Mount Kilimanjaro looked in uh, 2010, you basically you go into a compound. It's a hotel that is closed off, so they keep you safe inside of the hotel. You can go outside, and we went outside to the local market, walked around. It's extremely poor country, so you just have to be aware when you're traveling in Africa. You are in a different world. But you stay in this place, and they get you ready, and they put you in the car, and they drive you to, let's call it, it's not a base camp, to the bottom of the mountain, and you start walking. And the first day, I remember, they drove us. We got out of the car, we like crossed the river, and the camp was set up for the night. And you go, there's one tent where they make you food, you eat, then you sleep in your own tent because you have to bring tents. And then the next day, when you pack everything up, the porters, they load up all the stuff and they just run up the hill. And by the time you make it to the next stop, everything is set up. Your lunch tent is set up, your tents are set, everything is ready for you. So going up Mountain Kilimanjaro, there is a lot of assistance, and you just need to be in really good shape. And you need to be a strong hiker. And one thing I noticed, Bill, and that's what I think it's a good thing to share with people. If you want to climb Mountain Kilimanjaro, do it now. It's better to do it earlier than later. because I noticed that people who were older, the last day is the most difficult day. So once you summit, to not get altitude sickness, they want you to go down, all the way down. So the longest route at that time, I think, our route was, I think, 7 or 8 days. We really took our time. But after you go up to the top, when you summit it, you get, I don't know, a little bit of time to just watch, enjoy the beauty, and then they make you go to, you have to make it all the way to the bottom. And I noticed that a lot of people who were older, they had really tough time going down because everyone's knees and hips were just in so much pain. They were just, we were walking down the hill, and I saw a lot of people like in pain because you're going down the hill and your joints, when you got older, just, it's so much pressure that people just couldn't make it. So if you have plans going up Mount Kilimanjaro, just move them up. Just because the older you get, the more difficult it would be for you to go down. Going up, I think, is okay, but going down in one day, it's really painful. And Tanzania, they have Mount Kilimanjaro, but they also have safari, and that's one of the things that I think that we were kind of lucky to combine it, because after climbing the mountain, we did the safari, and it was basically, you're in a nice lodge, like they feed you really well, and you can take these day trips and watch the animals. They put you in the Land Rover, and they drive you into the wild, and you just watch all kinds of different animals. We had this breakfast at the pool, and the pool is actually the river where the Great Migration crosses. And the Great Migration, I don't know if you've seen it on TV, is basically a bunch of animals come to a river and they have to cross it. And that river is populated with crocodiles. So nobody wants to cross first. And they just pile from the back until there is so much pressure that they push one. And then one goes, they all follow. And we were there at the end of the Great Migration, meaning like the majority of animal crossed, but it was still impressive to see. And when you have breakfast at the pool, what you see is, it could be a little bit gross, but basically crocodiles, they cannot chew. They kill their food and they wait for the food until it rottens, and then they just swallow it. So you're having breakfast by the pool, and the pool is this huge river, and you see these huge crocodiles pushing these huge animals that they already killed, and they're waiting until they can be eaten. So the process of cooking food for crocodiles is they're just pushing those bodies, across the water, and you're sitting there. It was just an amazing scene. It's nature, it's like nothing that we can see in our normal life. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. But what's more incredible were the people of Tanzania. I don't remember laughing that hard. We met two ladies who do missionary work for an American, I don't know what, I'm not sure what it was. I think they were Christian. There was some Christian missionaries. And those two local ladies, they got to go for a weekend and stay at this place and just basically relax. And we were just talking by the fireplace outside, and we were laughing so hard that we see the whole resort was like gravitating towards us. And I asked them, I said, look, I never laughed so much in my life. Like, do you guys live like this? And they said, like, Lyubim, we have so many, first of all, we have nothing. And the only thing that we have in our life are problems. And when you have nothing and the only things that you have are problems, if you don't share it, you just go crazy. So it's our cultural thing to share and unload things. Like, they're very social. And one thing I think I would like to mention is that all the places, because I lived in so many places, I naturally make contact with locals, and I am okay. I don't have this barrier. I would never go to a different place and order a hamburger. Maybe friends, because they have really good meat. But you know how a lot of times people travel and we want to go and find the food that we're familiar with. We want to go and see where the Americans are, and we want to go to the places that are all Americans write about on TripAdvisor or whatever. And I would say, like, all the places on the TripAdvisor, yeah, you have to see like Sagrada Familia and those things. But try to get away from familiarity. Try to talk to local people. even if you don't speak English, now we have Google Translate or Chat
Yes.
GPT. You can have a conversation over Chat GPT, and once you start talking to locals, then your experience of traveling becomes completely different. I don't know if you have the same experience.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a topic that comes up on probably about a half of the episodes, that to really truly experience travel, I think you have to do that. Otherwise, you're just experiencing it what every other tourist sees.
Yeah, you
And
eating hamburgers,
some of the greatest memories that I have and experiences I've had have been talking to locals or even just other travelers. But just getting out there and having, you're creating memories and experiences just by talking and exploring. And I want to eat what the locals eat. I don't want to I can go back home and have a burger. I want to
right?
have what they have and experience that. I may not like it, but I want to try it.
Yeah. What is your favorite place, Bill? We've been talking about where I've been, but what is your favorite? What is the most favorite, memorable place that you've been to?
There's a couple of them, and it's funny because most of the time nobody asks me questions. And the last few episodes I've recorded, I've had people asking me questions. And I love it. I'm fine with it. My two favorite, I would probably say, off the top of my head, are there's so many. Santorini in Greece for its beauty, and the food is incredible there as well.
Hmm.
And the most impactful place I was ever at was Medellin in Colombia.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
so those are my two, and I've got a soft spot for Puerto Rico. I've got a soft spot for Prague in the Czech Republic. My daughter went to school there for
Oh,
3
wow.
years, and so got to visit her a couple of times. And it's a old town Prague is just beautiful. And so
Hmm.
yeah, so those are my spots.
Yeah, Prague is really, it's a beautiful city. I think it's really crowded. I don't know if you've run into
Yeah. Oh
crowds.
yeah.
I've been there a few times and it's always just jam packed. How about
Yeah.
Amsterdam? Have you been to Amsterdam?
No, I almost had a chance to, and I didn't. So it's still on my list. I'd like to get there as well.
Okay, so one of the things that I found out, because we're doing this cross Atlantic flight, if you go to Amsterdam, it's the closest in terms of time. So it makes a lot of sense to fly and take a break there. It's really pricey because so many people want to come and see it. I've been to Amsterdam many times, and last year we actually went to see the tulips. It was April, end of March, beginning of April, but there is a season when the tulips are in bloom.
Hmm.
And if you Google it, they tell you where to go, and that is actually amazing. I think going to see tulips. So if you're making this long trip across the ocean, if you fly to Amsterdam, it's a beautiful city. That's where you'll see a lot of crowds, but it's really really awesome. Because they have the canals, they have the old city, it's one of the cities that you can walk for days. And then it's such a small country that you can rent a car and you can drive a few hours and go see the tulips in bloom. And once you're done with that, you can continue south and find some place warm. So in one trip, it's really possible to, see Amsterdam and Holland and then catch some other country, continuing east or southeast in the European Union. But Amsterdam is definitely a place to put on the list because it's really. I was fortunate that every time I come to Amsterdam, it's sunny. Everybody says I come in and taxi drivers say, "Oh man, we haven't seen the sun like in 2 months," and I'm like, "I've never." I see the rain. The day I leave, it always starts raining. But I am fortunate to see that city when it's sunny and it's really cool.
Well,
When the
so whenever I
flowers are
plan to
bloom.
go, I'll reach out to you and make sure that maybe you can meet me there, so that at least you bring the sun.
Okay. Maybe you can bring some listeners. That way, we'll do it for some other people too. Do you ever
Yeah,
have
that would be
people
great.
come with you who listens to the podcast? Have you ever had somebody come with you?
So the my pod is still relatively new. I'm only geez, it's June now, so I guess I'm a few months into actually
Oh,
having the
okay.
podcast. I'm
So,
recorded for episodes out till near the end of the year, but so I feel like I've been doing it a lot longer.
mhm.
Yeah, and I'm planning to do something like that. So here's breaking news on the podcast. I am planning once listenership grows to do like a listener trip,
Yeah,
whether
that would
that be
be
to
awesome.
Amsterdam or somewhere. But yeah, definitely going to do something down the road.
That would be cool
Yeah,
if you can take people. I think you will find a large amount of people that want to go in a group. I
yeah,
think traveling by yourself, when you do it your entire life, like I did it, for me, it's just like the same thing as traveling between different states. But I know for a lot of people, it's stressful. And if you can organize a group of your listeners and take them to a place that you've been to, even if you go like to Prague, that you know so well, that would be a really awesome thing. So you fly to Amsterdam, you spend 2 or 3 days in Amsterdam, and then you go to Prague, and that's one
yeah.
week. But if you have more time, then you can. European Union is so small. I don't know if if we think about the United States is huge compared to Europe. Europe is so tiny. You can just drive through the whole thing and go from country to country in
And
one day.
even
You can.
like rail travel is so easy to get around. Just to take a train, and
Yes,
yeah, and it's so inexpensive as well. Once you're there, it's very affordable. So
trains are superior to what we have in the United States. That's one of the few things that they have better than we do.
yeah, absolutely, I agree. Yeah. Um, I was going to ask you. So one of the episodes, actually, it's when we're recording. It aired today. Actually, I had a guest who we specifically were talking about the differences with solo travel compared to traveling with a companion or multiple companions. And he told a story that was just, he said it was just the most beautiful thing that happened to him. And he was realizing in the moment he had no one to share it with. And so it was, and it's something that's difficult to put into words when you're trying to tell the story of how that happened. And do you find the same thing? Like when you're traveling solo, you almost wish you had someone else to be able to. Do you remember when that happened? And then be able to have that back and forth and
I
sharing the
travel,
stories. I think it makes a
Bill,
difference.
I think I understand. Like if you take a trip once in a while, once a year, once every 3, 5 years, then you probably want to have somebody with you, because I would say it's better when you have a companion. But I travel all the time, and it's like a normal part of my life that for me, it doesn't really matter. It's really,
Hmm.
most of the time I move alone because I moved a lot and I move really fast. So it's hard for other people to keep up with me. And I understand, like, I end up rushing them and they end up slowing me. Do you
Uh,
know what I mean? So it's a little bit different. But if you're a traveler, if your normal life in the States, you work and I think the biggest issue for us is finding time, finding that time. So if you travel once in a while, then maybe you do want to go with somebody. It's better to go with somebody else, I would say, but I wouldn't make it a reason for not going.
yeah,
So yes,
absolutely.
it's more beautiful when you can share it with the loved one, with your spouse. Or like you said, you went to see your daughter. That's a really cool thing. I So for people who take their kids, and they go traveling with their kids, I met a lot of people who have this lifetime tradition of going with their son or with their daughter to different places. Like they take them on safaris. They go to, like you said, you went to Prague. I think I think traveling is the most awesome thing because it really opens up your mind. You see different things that you've never seen before. And if you make an effort and meet the locals, meet the people who live in the country that you're going to, you may be able to see some things in life that you've never seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. You and I are kindred spirits in that, for sure. I agree 1,000%. So, well, this
What is your next trip planned? Bill, what is your next trip? Tell me, please. I cannot let you go without knowing where you're going next and when, if you can.
so I leave tomorrow for Florida for a week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it's nothing grand.
Any
It's
trips
just
planned
a
outside?
getaway. No,
Any trips planned outside?
I don't at the moment. My next trip will probably be to see my daughter again. She now lives in New Zealand, and so Yeah, but it
Wow.
probably won't be until sometime early next year.
Okay. So you have a kid who's traveling all over the world.
Yeah, she got it
Okay.
from her mom. She's a
Awesome.
traveler for sure. Yeah. So yeah, and I think she'll actually be home here in a couple of weeks, but I still want to go see her there and experience New Zealand. I've heard nothing but good about how beautiful it is there. So
I have two friends who flew there for 5 years and they really miss it. They live in Austria right now. They're flying in the Alps, but they said that New Zealand was a super special place. I've never been to, that's one of the places. I've never been to Australia or New Zealand, but yeah,
yeah,
it's a long trip from anywhere in the world.
yes, yeah. So I've got to make a lot of planning for that one. So
Yeah.
let's, if you don't mind, let's get to the 5 questions that I have, and then if there's anything else we want to share before we wrap up, we can.
Okay.
But and one of the questions you've already answered, actually, but well, I'm going to ask it
Oh,
anyway.
cool. I get only four.
Well, question number one is: of all of the places in the world that you have been, what is your most memorable meal experience that you've ever had?
I was driving from France, from Lake and Sea, from the French Alps, and I was crossing up through the mountains. And I found this place. I don't even know where it was, but it was Switzerland because it had a Swiss flag on top. And I don't eat much meat. I don't eat red meat almost, I don't eat it at all here in Turkey because it's hot, and I don't really think that eating like meat in hot places is a good thing. But it was winter and there was a lot of snow, and it was just this one hotel at the top of the mountain. And I remember ordering a steak and it was just absolutely amazing. I remember like we were talking and I remember what that hotel looks like. And if I find pictures, I will send you the pictures of that place because it was just out of this world. So if you are like in French Alps or if you're in Switzerland, you really need to try meat. And I'd say when you go to mountain places, like their local meat is like in Austria. I also love meat in Austria because they hunt it right there and it's not traveling anywhere. It's super fresh. But that one place in between crossing from France, going to Switzerland, I was going from Lake and Sea towards Geneva because I was flying in Geneva, and that one place is just unbelievable. So,
Excellent.
sounds simple, but
No,
that was
it impacted you enough to remember that, so that's what matters. So okay, question number 2. Of all the Again, this is the one I think you've already answered, but maybe you have another answer on top of it. Of all the places in the world that you have been, even if I offered you a free trip, you would say no, I'm not going.
Moldova.
Yeah. I knew that was your answer, but I still wanted to ask in case there was maybe.
It's definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And we already talked about why, so excellent. So now flipping that around, of all of the places in the world that you have been, where do you absolutely have to go back to?
Japan. Because I went to Japan for the Olympic Games, and it's something that you train for your entire life, and it was so stressful. Like, even going to Nagano, I remember like Japanese people were so cool, they were so welcoming, inviting, and it was like such a huge celebration. But because the amount of stress and pressure you have, like I didn't, we drove through Tokyo, and we were flying out of Osaka. And I also wanted to see the monkeys that are swimming in the natural pools, and I wanted to see Hokkaido. Just like definitely Japan, without a doubt. I want to go back to Japan, and I want to see it like not as an athlete but as a tourist and really enjoy my time there.
So, just as a side note, episode 15 of my podcast has a story by my guest about going with the monkeys up into the hot springs, and
Okay, I'm listening to
it
it.
is a beautiful story. And actually, the teaser at the very
Okay,
beginning is from that story. So, yeah, episode
thank you for
15.
sharing.
Yeah,
15.
yep.
Okay, I got it down.
That whole episode is incredible. But so I guess I didn't even put two and two together. You actually were an Olympic athlete as well.
Yeah. And I got lucky that I qualified for the best place to go. I had the Olympic Games in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Yeah. How did you do?
mm, one event better than expected, and another one we had tough weather conditions, so I was second from the end on the large hill.
Ah, but
If they gave silver medals for the guys at the back end, I would get a silver medal.
but it's the experience, right? I mean, I'm sure it was a letdown in a
I
way,
was
but
never good enough. I was not, even though I went to the Olympics, I know the difference between me and top athletes in the world, and we're not made of the same. There's something different psychologically and physiologically. They are super human beings. And I was just a guy who worked really hard for that dream. And everything came together at the right time, and I was able to go. So, the dream for me was to go to the Olympics.
mm-hmm.
And just if you look at the history, the Soviet Union was such a huge medal machine, but in the history of the whole Soviet Union, there was one gold medalist at the Olympics. So ski jumping was not a sport that you did for the medals. You did it because I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved jumping, and I knew I had a zero chance of medaling, and I probably had 1 or 2% of getting to the Olympics. But I'm really glad that everything worked out, and I'm really glad that it was in Japan. It was like icing on the cake.
I mean, it's what an incredible accomplishment just to get there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing that stays with you. You're an Olympian forever. All other things, they are like great accomplishments, but being an Olympian, you really feel like I remember that all the wars stopped at that moment, and for me, it was a big deal
Yeah.
that nobody
Awesome.
was fighting because they were watching the Olympic Games.
So awesome. And it's one of my favorite things to do when the Olympics come on is to watch. I watch all of it that I can get in. So, okay, two questions left. The
Okay.
fourth question four is of all the places in the world that you have not been, what are the one or two absolute must get to places?
New Zealand and Australia,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so far away, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, I wanted to go to India, but I don't want to go to India anymore. I had this gravitational pull. I don't know why. And I really wanted to walk across it. But that went away with time. But definitely, I would say Australia and New Zealand because they're so far away. And oh, by the way, I have one big one that I had on my list and I forgot about it. I always wanted to ski in the Southern Hemisphere. So, Argentina, or yeah, somewhere far in South America where you can go summer skiing.
Yeah, that would be cool. Speaking of skiing, here's another tip for you. I'm sorry to do this. I don't mean it as like self
That's
promotion,
cool.
but
Good.
episode 10 is all about skiing.
Okay. So I will download your podcasts and I will listen to them on the plane next time.
There
When
you
I'm
go.
flying, that's my time to catch up.
There you
So
go.
I know I have number 10 and I have number 15.
Yes.
Please keep telling me if there are any other places that really, because that's how we learn.
Yeah.
I hope that you listeners will get some inspiration to go and fly across the pond, to stop in Amsterdam, spend a few days there. It's good, 7, 8 hour flight, not that long, and then you can continue anywhere in Europe.
And find your way to Turkey at some point.
Okay, you have to make it to Turkey. I don't know. For me, it just works. Everything works for me. I
Yeah.
know, there are a lot of people see a lot of issues, and if it's a little bit messy, but it's the only thing that you will find trash. But otherwise, it's just perfect.
Excellent. Final question is, where are you going? What do you have planned?
Okay, I'm going to Austria in 10 days. I'm going to fly. This is my. I'm at the end of 6 months of burning the candle on both ends. I went really hard since the beginning of the year. Actually, it's been going on probably a full year with no breaks, no real breaks, and really a lot of pressure. I was trying to get Wings for Heroes off the ground, and I really need a break because I'm super tired and I feel that like my energy is leaving me. I have to take naps during the day, which never happened before. I'm going to Austria And we're so close that I can fly to Italy. We are right at the northern part of the Alps, but if I fly to the other side of it's faster for me to fly a paraglider to Italy than to drive a car. And I can fly there in 45 minutes, but it will take me a 3+ hour drive. So it would be Austria. We will definitely fly in Italy, and then maybe I'll go to the States. I'm not sure yet in the fall, but definitely in November. I have to organize the event that I mentioned at the beginning in San Diego in Torrey Pines. So my next trip is to Austria, and the following trip is probably to the United States.
Excellent. Well, this has been incredible and wonderful. It's unlike any other episode I've had. Your stories, your life, it's incredible what you've been through and what you've accomplished. And I can't wait for this one to air. So, and is there anything you'd like to add or leave with before I hit stop?
If you have Mount Kilimanjaro on your list, start training now. Find a reputable company that will take you up the hill. Read all the reviews, all of them. Get the best gear that you can and go now, because when you get older, it would be super difficult for you to go down. You will make it to the top, but going down is going to be suffering. So don't put it off. Get fit, get healthy, get to the top of that mountain. And I think all other places, they're pretty accessible. So I'd say if you have a goal to conquer a mountain, you got to do it right now, not put it off for retirement or later years. That would be super difficult.
Excellent. Well, you've been great, Lyubim, and thank you again for taking this time with me. And I know you've got other things to do. Another one of these.
It was fun. It was fun traveling like this. It's the same thing. Images go through your mind, the experiences, the people, the conversations. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Stay with me for just a minute, okay? But thank you again, and good luck on everything you have going on.
Thank you.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. It was another great guest with some great stories, as always, and I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whybpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site, and check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.